I would like to thank you for joining our third session, a combination of platform links and also these meetings we have. I would also like to welcome and at the same time thank Valeria Salvatori, an expert in conflict management with large carnivores. She has a PhD in geography. She's a conservation biologist, general secretary and manager of Instituto di Ecologia Applicata NGO, member of IUCN, Large Carnivore Initiative for a Europe Task Force. She also has studies and has worked as a consultant for many international organizations in Chile, the Netherlands, Southampton, Argentina, Sapienza, and also life projects as well as in Greece. Valeria.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Welcome, everybody. I see that there are some people already in, and maybe some more will join the session. Well, today we will go in depth of a topic that you have already explored, and we will see a case study that is mainly related to large carnivore conservation. So I will now share my screen. So what I would talk you about is the experience that we made during a contract that we held with the European Commission for the establishment of what they call local stakeholder platforms to improve coexistence between people and large carnivores. The European Commission has taken these, being inspired by a stakeholder platform, which is essentially a roundtable where representatives of different stakeholder associations at the European level sit and meet every 6 months now, since the last 6 or 7 years in Brussels with the support of the European Commission. And the EU platform on coexistence between people and large carnivores has the mission to share experience and collaboration and promote collaboration between different stakeholders. So they wanted to establish a similar mechanism at a local level. And they issued a call for offers, and we got the contract. Just a little a glimpse on large carnivores, what we are talking about. These are 5 species now 5 with the jackal that we are also including. These are data produced by the IUCN task force called the Large Carnivore Initiative for Europe, showing the distribution ranges of the wolverine, the brown bear, the wolf, the Eurasian lynx, and the jackal. The Iberian lynx is also considered a large carnivore, but we actually don't cover the data collection for these species because there is a task force within the IUCN cat specialist group. So as you see, these large carnivores cover quite extensive ranges in Europe, and some of these maps are now out of date, and we are in the process of updating them. And they are present in an area which is largely dominated by human presence. This is a night vision of Europe, and you can see that in many areas where these animals, these species are present, actually they do share the landscape with humans. Now, what is the legal status of these species in Europe? They are subject to different international conventions, international legislation, pieces of legislations, and also then these international legislations are translated into national laws and rules. What is important is that at the European level, the two main pieces of legislation are the Berne Convention and the EU Habitats Directive, which place most of the large carnivore species in their Annex 204 for the Berne Convention and 204 for the Habitats Directive. Here in this map taken from a publication by Ari Troborst and colleagues, you can see what the wolf is classified in the Habitats Directive and the Berne Convention. Sorry, what happened here? Okay, so as you can see, in most areas, these species are protected. In some cases, they are protected only by the Berne Convention. In some others, both by the Berne Convention and the Habitats Directive. So their management so far, I would say, is quite strict and regulated in theory. Now, when large carnivores are present, then they immediately stimulate a diversity of interests from people. And these interests range from recreational, like, people being engaged in tourism trips for bear watching, for example, or, they're of particular interest to researchers because they have characteristic ecological traits. They also have economic interests for some people because they can they can produce income. Think about activity related to tourism for species watching, but also for the impact, the economic impact that they have while undertaking their natural ecological functions, which is mainly related to food consumption through the predations of domestic species. And also hunting. In some countries, trophy hunting is still an activity, but they also have an impact of other species that are used for trophy hunting, as you can see in this picture. And then they also lately attract some political interests, and not so rarely nowadays, they are also used in political debates and campaigns to claim votes. The presence of large carnivores is also very often associated to conflicts. We often hear the term wolf-human conflicts, bear-human conflicts. And when we hear these, what we think about is the interactions of these species that these species have while simply, developing their own life, their activities for surviving, and this of course implies feeding on human-related sources like beehives for bears, livestock, for wolves mainly. And then they also get used to use human-dominated landscapes at their own profit, like this bear, which I took a picture from in Romania. And he was feeding, looking for food at a rubbish bin. But what, for example, is meant by the wolf conflict? When we go in a major detail and start analyzing in depth the wolf conflict, then we start talking about heads of livestock killed by wolves, or game predated, which is decreased in availability to hunters, and essentially danger perceived by people. You can see that this person absolutely doesn't perceive any danger, which he should, in fact. So is this actually a conflict? I think, and I am strongly convinced, that what we talk about when we think about wolf conflict is actually impact, is the impact that wolf has on human activities during the development of its own natural life. So wolves need to eat, and they eat whatever they want. So they depredate whatever they find. They depredate livestock heads. Bears might find cultivations. Maize cultivations are usually destroyed. So hectares of destroyed cultivations, they might impact, as we said, the availability of game to hunting. They also might trigger some mechanisms whereby the hunting rules are modified if in a particular place it is found important to restrict hunting practices in a manner that can cause disturbance to some of these species which are protected. They might modify their presence might lead to modification of access rules if in some other areas it is deemed important not to disturb, for example, during the reproduction phase. Or they might as well trigger the modification of infrastructure development rules if they were planned in areas that are sensible for ensuring the long-term survival of these species. So these are all impacts. All these items have an impact on the normal development of human activities. When we talk about conflict, though, if we look at the many definitions of conflicts, then we step into a completely different sphere of research and topics that we need to consider. Conflicts is defined as clash of opposed principles and values, or are states of opposition and hostility. So conflict is actually when two living entities have contrasting interests, compete, for example, and usually one of them perceive that the other is safeguarding his or her own interest at the expenses of himself. So there is an unbalanced situation. So I really don't think that wolves perceive the different interest of people. They just don't care. The material impact, though, if not adequately addressed, might evolve in conflict. And not because it's the wolf or the bear that enters in conflict with humans, but it's because the material impact not being tackled or managed might trigger the development of situations where different people holding positions that might evolve and hold extreme positions go into conflict, and feels that one side is unbalanced towards the other. And when we talk about impact, what we need to do for tackling it is actually intervene with technical tools. If we want to prevent the impact, then we need to design interventions that have the objective of decreasing the probability of such impact to happen. And once the impact has happened, then we have to design tools and measures that might compensate for economic losses or other kinds of losses. So what is needed is actually timely and high standard technical interventions, adequate standard interventions. While when the situation evolves into a conflict, there we need to have an integrated approach that takes into consideration different aspects of the situation, the socioeconomic and cultural assets. We might need to hire some professional mediators or facilitators that hold neutral position and try to understand and establish channels that can trigger some dialogue between the different parties. You might need to have the capacity to negotiate solutions, which most often are not completely satisfactory by none of the parties. So I'm very doubtful about the concept of win-win solutions. There's always, a loser and a winner, or both losers, because both of them don't get exactly what they want. And then there must be some political willingness to do what is required actually to mediate a conflict. So in practice, the intervention, if we don't intervene very timely, then the impact might evolve in conflict, and then we need much greater effort that translates into an integrated intervention that very often leads to unpredictable outcomes, because it depends on the initial situations, but also on external events. Remember, political campaigns are now run on some aspects of management of large carnivores. So, the situation might change completely during the process of mediation. So we need to avoid actually to get into conflicts by tackling impacts as adequately as we can. This is an image from the data that were collected back in 2019, 2020, analyzing a measure of impact of wolves through an indicator, which was in this case the compensated amounts, which is of course only a partial indicator of the phenomenon. And you can see that, you know, there are some areas where the compensation is really reaching high values. But is this really a measure of, you know, what impact is on the human activities? If we only think about the amount compensated, then I think we are losing a big share of the problem. What are we looking at? We are actually looking at the part of the percentages of depredations that get reported. So we are losing part of the information. The percentage of reported compensation that get verified, the percentage of reported verified depredations that get compensated. So if we base the estimate of impact only on the amount of compensation paid, then we are losing the full image of the phenomenon. There are technical tools that can be applied both to prevent and to compensate losses. This is an image taken from a paper published by Anne Eklund and colleagues. And there they also report that most of these tools are very poorly evaluated. So we spend a lot of money introducing these measures, these tools, and we actually don't know if they work effectively. Yet, you know, in many cases, people see that the situation improves. So there are many elements that get into the concept of impact, and those that are usually reported. This is again taken from a publication that we did with Vincenzo Gervasi. I think we are still missing, you know, a lot of elements that are part of the social spectrum of analysis. And that's where actually when these social aspects were started to be included, where we assisted to a paradigm shift from purely technical consideration of these issues and phenomena to a more socially inclusive approach. Here I show a couple of documents that we produced back in 2008 and 2013, nearly, you know, 10, 15 years ago, where we were really, you know, basing our guidance on purely technical and scientific knowledge. What we need here is to include other kinds of knowledge in order to make the technical guidance more understandable, more acceptable, and more applicable. Because if we provide technical guidance which is in fact in practice not applicable because of social resistance, then we are failing. So that was the homepage of the EU platform, which I mentioned before, which is supported by the European Commission. And this is these are the places where the first three local stakeholder platforms were developed during the contract that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. The three situations that we were asked to tackle were in Spain, in the Avila province, where there was an increasing wolf population that caused increasing damages to livestock production. Just to give a little bit more of information, Avila is a province of the autonomous region of Castilla y León. the Duero River crosses the autonomous province of Castilla y León. The Habitat Directives provides the population of wolf in Spain north of the Duero River under the Annex 5, which means that it can be manageable, provided that a long-term favorable conservation status is not threatened. And this means that can be hunted, although not hunted, but can be controlled. While south of the River Duero, the species is strictly protected. So within the same region, the province of Avila holds livestock breeders that are engaged in high quality production of the Avila breed, Avila cow breed, and don't understand why just across the province border the wolf can be managed and they cannot do it, and they have to suffer great losses. In Italy, we had the study area in Grosseto province, which is one of the largest provinces in Tuscany region, central Italy, where again wolf had increased in the last decades and affected the very typical production of sheep, free-ranging sheep, used not mainly for meat, but mainly for cheese, DOP cheese. And then in Romania, we had Harghita County in northern Carpathian Mountains, where a wealthy population of bears is present all across the Carpathian Mountains. And the changes in management regimes forbidden the control of the bear population since 2016, and then they started growing and entering villages, causing quite a lot of damages, including injuries and fatalities to humans. So the approach that we adopted was inspired by the publication of our colleagues. Steve Redpath was main author, and he was actually part of the advisory committee to the project, whereby in order to understand and manage conservation conflicts, you need to have a multidisciplinary approaches and a two-stage process. The first stage is on the left-hand side, where the conflict emerges and is perceived. Then you have to understand the mapping conflict circle requires a deep understanding of the current situation and the acquisition of knowledge on the history, on the legal and economic context, on the social-political characteristics of the area. Why is something important to the citizens there? Why is something perceived as so much negative there, which might not be perceived as negative in other areas? And these, of course, require abilities and knowledge and capacity that might not belong to the biology realm. So once we have acquired this knowledge and we have a more or less clear picture of what is going on, then we need to engage the affected parties, the involved parties, and ask them whether they would be willing to do something themselves instead of just complaining and waiting for someone else to do something. And if they do want to discuss, then we jump on the second wheel. This is also called by the colleagues the upside down bicycle. So we pass on to the second wheel on your right hand side, and we start the management circle, whereby you really need to engage with stakeholders and give space to them. And this is where the political willingness is really crucial, because this actually means giving up a little bit of power. And politicians don't like to give up power. So this is really the tricky phase, where you need to find a balance between governance and the people who are engaged in the conflict. It is, of course, extremely important to have, as I said, different abilities. Now, what we have done is actually to engage in these three areas, which I described very briefly earlier, Avila, Grosseto, and Harghita, in a process that foresaw a series of steps. And we did so on the hypothesis that the current management of either wolf or bear wasn't satisfactory for several reasons. So we actually explored what the reasons were. We went in the field, we interviewed the stakeholders that were identified. We started with a very preliminary list of stakeholders. We drafted a map of stakeholders. I mention these things because I know you've heard all of these in previous lectures. And then through a snowballing processes, we eventually asked each person that we met whether we needed to listen to somebody else. So then we closed the circle. Once we got this idea, we then asked them whether they would be willing to be engaged in a process that's for at least six meetings, one per month. And at the end of the sixth meeting, we would end up with a list of proposals that they would have produced. And these proposals were actually practical interventions that were expected to improve the situation. So, in fact, our theory was that working with these people who had bad relationships with each other, we would emphasize and support their capacity to collaborate and to cooperate in order to improve their relationship and release the tensions that causes the conflict. By doing this, we actually also triggered two learning loops. One was the social learning loop, which was essentially the one that I just mentioned, which is related to the improvement of relationships between different groups. And then the ecological learning loop, which is related to the improvement of the ecological conditions that also include the wolf for bear conservation. So going step by step, the first one or two meetings were dedicated to actually drafting a group mission. This made them see the objective very clearly. Many of them told us, we are not getting, to coming to the meeting just to talk. We need to see some concrete outcomes. We need to see some results. So the mission actually set the objectives, and the objectives were very clear, because what they said is that they wanted to develop practical solutions that would ensure the well-being in the interest of all stakeholders. And they would do that by supporting livestock holders in Grosseto, and they would do that by the first months of 2019, and we were in October 2018. So the objectives were very clear, and they also were set within a time frame, which made us able to also assess whether they were achieved. Once we got them to agree in setting objectives, we supported them in knowing better the position of each other. And we did that through the creation of heterogeneous groups that were sharing actually their value towards one thing that they had in common: the landscape, the territory that they belong to. And this is the strength of having local platforms, is that you engage with people that belong to a restricted area. They feel very much deep-rooted in the area. They love it because there is an issue of identity. They identify themselves with the territory. And no matter which position you have towards wolf, you love your territory, you love your land, and you want to do as much as you can to preserve it the way it is, or to improve it. So we supported them in identifying what were the issues, the items that they most cared about. And then they were able to share some key experiences that they had lived in the territories that were somewhat linked with the presence of wolves. So there we had, episodes of a farmer assisting to depredation just lively under her eyes, and she got very emotional because she was feeling powerless, and she had to she was she couldn't intervene, and that was very emotional. And when we asked to someone else from another group to actually report what she said, we could understand what the story that the one person said was, how it was perceived by someone else. And we understood that the value of the work that some people do was not actually fully understood. Then we asked them to put themselves in the shoe of others. And we could do that only after the fourth meeting, because we already established a certain level of confidence, of intimacy. At the beginning of the process, we asked the people to be engaged, and always the same people had to come at the meetings. Even if they were representing one organization, we would ask the organization to send always the same people, because this made it easier to establish relationship, contacts within people. So they felt comfortable talking about their own experiences, and they felt comfortable playing role, an animal welfare activist playing the role of a hunter. and being confident that he could do that with other hunters in the room. Finally, we asked them to think about what could be done to actually get to the objective, to improve the situation in their own landscape. And we did so by first creating homogeneous groups so that the people could think, with their own ways of understanding and talking, and then discussing the proposed activities within heterogeneous groups so that they could also get a feeling of what was acceptable by other people. And then we shared these in plenary with the whole group, and these then produced a long list of activities, and then we needed to find a way to decide which one of these activities were going to be implemented, because the Commission allowed us to use part of our budget to implement some of these actions. So we did that through a multi-criteria decision approach, which was found a little bit too difficult by some participants, but allowed them to have an objective approach, and through this robust method they could actually defend their decisions to the outside world, because then the next step would have been to present these proposals to the relevant authorities. Now, I just show very briefly some of the proposals that they made, and you will see that very few of them have a direct link with wolves. For example, they were grouped, these are mainly for Grosseto and Avila. They were grouped into three main themes: impact or damage on properties, research and information, and communication and promotion. So talking about impact, they wanted to have more pasture and wanted to have some interventions against fire. They wanted to get some financial support to implement damage prevention measures. They want to have professionals going into the farms with their adequate capacity, so they wanted them to be trained. And here I just highlight some activities that have not direct links with wolf, but they would improve their life. Then when it comes to research or information, they expressed the interest in being involved in monitoring of large carnivores. They wanted to know how it was decided when a permit was issued for removing this or the other wolf or bear, because this wasn't clear for them. And then they wanted to get access easily to all the information that is produced with most often public money to pay for research projects on wolves and bears, and they can't access. So these are really issues that ask for consideration and for personal improvement. And then when it comes to communication and promotion, here really the frustration of not being recognized as being part of an ecosystem is very well expressed. They felt the need to develop communication campaign for promoting how some farming practices can actually be beneficial to the ecosystem and have a direct role through ecosystem services in our everyday life, because they bring quality food on our tables. And also they wanted to have more regulated use of the land where they actually work and that they care about. So what are the conclusions here, the take-home messages? Large carnivores usually don't engage in a dispute with humans, but they can cause impacts that, if not well managed, then they might evolve into conflicts. What is important to do in order to avoid that these impacts actually evolve into conflicts is understanding the issue. So just looking at the amount of money paid is not enough. Giving the adequate consideration, just understand what are the socio-economic and cultural settings of each person that is involved, each sector that is involved. And make sure that you have the adequate skills to intervene and manage such impacts. Then large carnivores can actually represent an opportunity to discuss much wider issues. And I think politicians should grab this opportunity, because they actually bring about much deeper rooted issues of equality, of power distribution, of social justice, of recognition and legitimacy that the politicians can do something about. But it's important to establish relationship of trust and act with clarity, which is not really a quality of politicians. So with this, I thank you for your attention, and I now ask you, after a few minutes of questions, if you have any, I will now take you to the practical session, but let's just give you a few minutes of questions, which I will be happy to answer to. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Mrs. Valeria, for your nice presentation. It was a good experience, and I'm happy to hear that. I have just two simple questions. Do you have concept document for large carnivores in your country, or just management plan? And another one is, who is responsible to do compensation to the local population in case of any damage by large carnivores, for example, by wolves? Which ministry? Ministry of Environment or Agriculture?
Well, you can find a couple of publications on this issue. One is certainly the one led by Vincenzo Gervasi that I mentioned. It varies quite a lot. Each country should have a management plan for the species that are listed in the Habitat Directive annexes. Not all European countries have a management plan. Italy doesn't at the moment. It is now, and we are now entering the 9th year of discussion of the drafted new edition of a management plan for wolf. We do have a management plan for bear. We don't have a management plan for lynx, but we have very few individuals. Italy is a semi-federal country, so just as Spain and Switzerland. Well, Switzerland, I'm not sure, but Germany for sure. A compensation is actually delegated to the regional governments. So each regional government has its own regulation, and the amount, the time to close each procedure and the quality of the assessment varies a great deal. And the availability of data, of course.
So you do have just management plan, but not the concept document, for example.
What is a country document?
Concept document.
A concept document.
You have it or just management plan? You do not have, right?
We don't even have a management plan. We have a draft management plan that is waiting to be approved by the governmental regions. Yeah, the regional government.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Tibor.
Hello.
Hi.
It was very interesting to hear that you actually were doing this research activities in Harghita country. I'm exactly from Harghita country. So, and I'm really curious because, of course, I'm not a carnivore conservationist. I'm forester. So indirectly, I'm linked with the bears. But I see and I experience a very toxic and critical campaign against the bear in this county. And I also saw in one of your pictures the president of the county council who is actually using public money to found this toxic campaign against the bears. And it's really getting to a point where I'm afraid that it won't be reversible. So actually local communities became they consider public enemy number one, the bear. And this is, I think, already at a stage where, let's say, conventional conflict management tools might be not enough. And I'm really curious, what is your opinion about this?
Now, Mr. Boboli is a very interesting character, the county president. Your association, are you from Pohani Havash?
No. I'm actually a freelance. So just I was involved exactly in that part in different projects, and I know the situation in the county. So, and of course I saw, for example, the large posters which he's actually founding from public money, and which are claiming that there is a bear mafia who is actually keeping the bears in this county and not solving the problem. So that's why I think it's really...
No, the situation in Romania is very complicated, and that's one place where I must admit, in all the 3 places that I presented, because then we developed platforms in 3 more places, we've completely failed in obtaining the support of the relevant authorities. In Romania, we even went to the Ministry of Environment with a delegation from the European Commission, asking for them to be supportive of the process, and they refused. So the problem there is that if you don't have the relevant authority on board, you can only actually hope for the social learning loop, whereby the people participating in the process actually get to know the different positions and options and understand, but then the situation is not solved because nothing is actually done. And we had a similar situation in Avila, whereby we actually did not propose the location to the Commission, but the Commission asked us to go there. And the government of Castilla y León really didn't want to have anything to do with us. So again, it was really difficult because at the end, when you have this long list, you have engaged with people, and you have this long list of proposals, and you present them to the relevant authorities, and you see that they are not willing to implement any of them is really disappointing. But yet, you know, some small alliances were established in Romania. Apart from the whole management, what can I say? In my opinion, everything should be revised in Romania, you know, from the ban that was imposed in 2016, that, you know, although I can support the ban, I cannot support the process. You cannot impose such a decision unless you have strong enough data that prove that the situation is really, you know, posing the bear situation in serious threat. So a ban on hunting imposed in such a way by, you know, inevitably triggered a lot of discontent and opposition, which is extremely difficult to counteract with.
Yeah, exactly. I fully agree that actually might be that the ecologically it's a viable thing, but socially it was completely mismanagement, because there are powerful local communities with very strong links to traditions, and hunting, it was a very influential business in Romania, and the cutting so short from a day to another actually made almost everybody an enemy of the bear.
Exactly. And they're not interested in actually solving the situation. They, to my knowledge, there is little investment in bear monitoring with high standards. So, you know, I don't see an easy way out.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Martina.
Hello, Valeria. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I already asked my question in the chat. I would like to know why there was an empty space in Austria when you showed the map.
An empty space in Austria. You see.
You show the map where the conflicts with large carnivores in different countries were shown. And I saw nothing in Austria, which made me wonder.
Because they kill everything.
Because we already had some bears around 30 years ago, and they disappeared mysteriously. And that leads me to my second question.
Are you referring to the maps of distribution of large carnivores?
Yes,
the
the one you showed in the very beginning.
Oh, there are some. I've just
okay.
But it's true that they are.
No, but I think there were another map with the amount of sheep that had been killed, and the
yes,
the economic compensation for the sheep killed. And I think it's in that map that Austria was not represented, maybe because of the information that it has been used, or because that system does not apply in Austria. I don't know. I think that map is the one that Martina is referring to.
Okay,
exactly.
So
Thank you.
Can you see the screen now? This is the map of distribution, right? Do you see the screen?
Yes, I meant the other one.
Okay. And then you want to see this.
Stop the last here.
It's because they weren't able to retrieve data. Even in Italy or in Spain, there is a lot of damages that are compensated.
Okay.
In this study, they weren't able to retrieve the data.
Thank you. And may I ask a second question? How do you estimate the influence of the hunters in this cases? Because if I have a very low forecast for how successful can I be without involving the hunters? If I have the feeling, for example, in Austria, I have the feeling I can find more lynx in freezers than in the nature. So they play a very big role. And if I have the feeling I have nearly no chance to involve them. Did you have similar cases, and you did it?
Well, there are, it depends on contexts. It is true that Austria is really difficult.
Thank
as
you.
I said, you know, virtually each bear that steps into Austria gets killed. So, you know, it's a very difficult country.
Okay.
But in Italy, for example, hunters are not, you know, a very strong interest group when it comes to bear or wolf hunting. Only indirectly when, you know, they claim that increased wolf population modifies habits of wild boars, for example. So it is, it really depends on contexts. But in some cases, they, and cultural context and also political contexts, because in some, that might be, you know, there might happen that you run this project in a, when a political government is supporting wildlife and nature protection. And then, you know, after 5 years, the government changes, and there is a government that has strong links with hunting world. So then everything changes, and you have to take these into account, and you have to just sit back and, you know, depending on the role that you want to play.
Thank you very much, because it sounds so easy, but like you presented those circles, and I thought, oh, it's impossible. It's impossible.
No, it's very difficult, but there are some tips that I can provide.
Yeah.
When we started, of course, when we got the contract, I said, okay, now you know, I just made myself, I just put myself into a mess. How do I get out of here? And the first thing I did is, even at the time of presenting the offer, I asked for support from people from outside, like you know, Steve Redpath, Juliette Young, and a couple of international facilitators who had long experience with such conflicts, so they could somehow act as an external advisory committee that, you know, would say, yes, what you are doing is right, or yes, what happens is actually not so rare. I also lived such a situation in other areas, and, you know, why don't you try doing this? And this is very reassuring. The second is when we started the actual processes in the area, the first thing to do is try to identify the key person in the area that can help you in getting in touch with as many people as possible. And you should act neutrally. So, for example, you know, I also did projects on wolf monitoring, and I am a biologist, but in Grosseto, I was neutral. I never said a single word about, you know, what I knew about wolves. And eventually I called, you know, for other people, my colleagues, or, you know, other experts or scientists to provide information. And this gives you credibility. And in some cases, for example, in Sweden, I never went to a meeting, but I hired a facilitator who had never worked with wolves, and him presenting himself as being hired by, you know, a body in Italy allowed him to gain more trust, because he didn't belong to any of the parties that were already placed somewhere in the Swedish political scene. So, yeah, every situation is different.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Helps a lot.
So the conversation, of course, has been quite interesting. And I think this is why we are here, to exchange ideas and questions and answers. But Valeria, I'm afraid that we only have like 15 minutes for the exercise. Is it enough, or it's better to just skip it?
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that because it's very easy.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to I will just present very briefly, but somehow you already know it because we have talked about it. Okay, let me see. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, you have to do the same, the scambio schermo. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, so these are the two contracts that we had. These are the platforms that we established. What I want you to focus on is the one on bear in Romania, which we have talked about, and the one in Sweden on mainly wolf, but also talking about other large carnivores. So the background in Romania, these are the information. Imagine that you had run all the interviews, okay? And these are the results. You went to Harghita several times. You got in touch with many people and interviewed them, and understood that the bear population was managed through a system of derogation until 2016, which was actually used sort of in a way for controlling the situation, but also to produce income for those who had to manage Natura 2000 sites and also hunting areas. But conflict over the reliability of estimates called for abandoned hunting. So no more hunting since 2016. And the abundant bear population now was not controlled anymore, is actually artificially fed, directly or indirectly, because sometimes the artificial feeding is left out for the ungulates. And our colleague from Romania can confirm this or modify what I'm reporting. And now there is no systematic monitoring in place, and also absence of a structured prevention and compensation program. Increasing tourist activities. So many bears are seen as an opportunity by tourist industries, and trips are organized for watching bears in a more or less unorganized manner. Okay, so these are typical countrysides in Romania, and this is what you get if you go and visit some places in the Carpathian Mountains. As you see, these people are actually from an organized tour. Well, this is actually a sport team who was taken out to see bears at rubbish bins. This is a campsite just nearby on the river shores, and this is a bear looking among the camping tents, looking for rubbish. What we got in touch with is local authorities, hunters, environmentalists, producers of bio products, honey producers, and foresters who are sometimes Natura 2000 administrators or managers. And this is, a typical statements that they come to us. So hunters actually say that if things don't change, then poaching will increase, meaning that they would have to kill the bears illegally. The farmers say, well, the bears come and feed on our products, so we are feeding them, and nobody actually sees it. Nobody says thank you to us. The honey producers actually perceive a change even in the biology of the species, saying that, they used to produce 1 pup and now it's at least 2 or 3 pups every year. So these are what they came about. In Sweden, there is a general disagreement on wolf management. You may have heard about it. So this is before the cull that was agreed last winter. But the population has increased since the last 20 years, where only few wolves were there, and they were reinforced by bringing in individuals from Finland. The objectives were set at the beginning to 50. When they got to 50, then they said, well, let's get to 100. And when they got to 100, they said, well, why don't we get to 300? And the hunters and the farmers said, well, are you, making jokes of us? We got one objective and now we move in the objective, and we thought that we are reaching the objectives, and now we always have another objective. So this made them very upset. Okay, this is just to show that the population is actually distributed in a fairly restricted area, isolated from this Finnish population, which is actually needed for genetic improvement. And these are one of the key activity in northern Scandinavia, the reindeer husbandry. And this is also another issue that is often reported, the killing of hunting dogs, so that they were actually given protection vests. Okay, these are some of the statements that we collected. So perception of his objectives from some are too many, for some others are just very, very low. Hunter says that they feel their freedoms limited by the presence of large carnivores, and some say that wolf kills badly, while lynx actually kills nicely. Okay, while scientists actually are lost in trying to understand, what are the political alienation and participation in governance and make these decision-making processes. So now I invite you to in the chat to go in the Miro table, which you can access through this link. Let me know if you can get there. Can you get there?
Miro is asking me to registrate. It's asking a registration before it allows me to actually go there.
Right.
So I don't know, Valeria. We really have 5 minutes. Do you think it's realistic to, or maybe we should just explain the idea and?
Okay, then I will explain the idea.
And maybe each of us can explore it a little bit more, with more relax some other day, because I'm afraid just going into and going outside is going to consume these 5 minutes we really have before we finish.
Okay, the idea is that first of all, I wanted you to familiarize with the tool, but I guess many of you already are familiar. And then here, I wanted you to actually split in groups of pairs, and each of you could play the role of one of the actors involved. In Sweden, so I created several pairs, and in Romania. And there you had to fill in the story of the person, like if you were a hunter in Sweden, you might be called, I don't know, one strange Swedish name, and you would be 45 years old with a happy marriage, and here you would have to insert a strong statement, and then tell about the professional background, just to get us to know the person. What is the character of the person? How would we eventually interact with her? And then the perspective on wolves, which are, essentially what. Sorry, no, I didn't want this. I just wanted to make it larger. Okay. What is the opinion? What are the feelings when she thinks about wolves being present in the area where she lives? What do you hope, for the future in order to get linked to these feelings? If she's afraid, then she might hope for something. If she's pleased to see the wolves, to know that the wolves are there, then she might hope for something else. And then point of view, how do you see the activities of the other person? Here is an environmental activist. What do you think about him? What would you like him or her to do? And that was, I wanted you to do it for each of the pairs. And then,
¿Lo lanzamos como trabajo o no?
You can do that. And that's it. And then the idea was to actually come back and have a look at one or two of these together. So this is it. I think we have 6 minutes left, or we have passed already the time. I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, Valeria. I think I left my micro open. Sorry if that was a nuisance. Yeah, I was talking with Maria that we can have this beautiful exercise you prepared as the week individual task. Every week we have an individual task. We had one prepared, but we can just forget about our initial plans, because I think this exercise that you have prepared is much more interesting. So we have the Miro link. We all have. We will send them again by email, and we will ask everyone to individually play this little role game at home, maybe today, tomorrow, or in the weekend, as the individual task of this week of the course. So we can benefit from the exercise you prepared, but with not avoiding the stress of doing in 5 minutes. I think it was really,
I agree.
Not a good idea. So thank you for your extremely interesting presentation and the insights, and also the very nice conversation with some of the participants. And I think this should be all for now, because we would like to be to stick to the schedule that we have previously announced, and many of us have other things. Probably you, Valeria, have other things to do now, and some of the participants also in the chat said that they have to leave at 2:30 because they have other business to take care of.
I can send you the presentation of the situations, you know, the scoping document, the presentation that I showed before, so that they can rehearse a little bit what the quotes that each of a stakeholder told, and then you can have fun.
Okay, thank you. So maybe Constantina, you can just close the session, and we will see next week. We will by email send you some information about the next week subjects and activities.
Thank you, Valeria, so much for your insight, and all of you for participating in our session. For closure, we would like to ask you to have a trip again on the platform, and the resources you are going to find there. Now you know about your task for you to fill in due time. And of course, you are going to hear from us by mail, as we have done the previous weeks. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Constantina.
Thank you.